You're listening to We Ain't Dying for This, a Black woman's guide to liberation, and I'm your host, Crystle Johnson. We are a community of Black women demanding our collective liberation through radically soft living. Each week, we share the stories of Black women who have set themselves free from the expectations of others and are living on their own terms.
Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of We Ain't Dying for This, a Black woman's guide to liberation. My name is Crystle Johnson, and I am your host of the show. And the first thing I want to say is I just need y'all to get into this new look and feel. And I want y'all to give a high five to our designer, Chloe Sosa Jarrett. Chloe, you are a genius, girl, and it looks amazing. And would love to hear from you all in the chat and what it is that you think about our new look and feel as well. Let us know where it is that you're listening in from. And as always, please send this recording and tag a Black woman that you think would resonate with this conversation. So if you're just listening in for the very first time, this series was created because, quite frankly, Black women are dying. And we're dying under all of the weight that we are under to be everything for everybody. And we're frankly done sacrificing ourselves. We're done self-abandoning, and we ain't dying for this. So it is my pleasure to always host Black women who are experiencing liberation in their own ways. I think we always think about liberation as you have it or you don't, but I think there are different ways for us to feel liberated in our lives. It is not a one size fits all. With that being said, I'm so excited to welcome Natasha D. Wade, my sis on LinkedIn and now through text messages, who lives in Houston. I'm in Austin. Can't wait to meet you in person, but so excited to welcome you here to the show today. Tell the people who you are, girl.
Well, I'm just the most amazing person in the world. No, I'm just kidding. So, hi, everyone. My name is Miss Natasha Wade. I am the CEO of Natasha Wade, your Black Woman Soul Coach, where I help Black women achieve their deepest soul desires in life, love, work, and play. And I do that through the art and craft of life and career coaching.
I love that so much. You always post things that are very thought-provoking, and I'm always like, what Natasha talking about? What she
Well, I be trying to rile y'all up, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not so much on purpose.
Yeah, I love it. So as I told you earlier, like as we were waiting in the background for this to start, you are such an amazing writer, and the way that you write and the ways that you make people think is like incredible. Because we may agree with you, we may not, but you still made us think about different ways to consider that particular topic.
Yeah, and it took me a long time to get here, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna get into that as we go into our public therapy session.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of the public therapy session, so we're going to be talking about balance and harmony as liberation. And we got to this topic one day. We were on LinkedIn, and you had commented on, I think it was Jonathan. What's Jonathan's last name?
Jonathan Carrington.
Yes. So Jonathan posted a post, and we started talking about like how we have picked up different habits and approaches and ways of living from our mothers, and the ways in which we felt so connected to those things. Like we have to go in this direction because our mother went in this direction, and how we've been able to break free from those things. And it's how we came up with this topic of balance and harmony as liberation. And today I talked about my mother specifically because I was sharing with you that there's this trend that's happening on TikTok right now around Caribbean mothers. And there's a sound that goes with it where people are talking about the different things that they do now because their mother did it.
Mm-hmm.
The post that I wrote today was really inspired by that, as well as our DM conversations about this topic, where I thought about the fact that just because your mama did it and just because your mama's mama did it doesn't mean that you need to do the same thing. I saw my mother self-abandon many times for the love of other people. And I've said this before on LinkedIn that I feel like my mother worked herself to death. Like she just worked and worked and worked and worked and worked and gave to everybody. She didn't have time for joy. She didn't have time for play. She just was always laying herself out there for others to have, I guess, to benefit from. So I want you to talk a little bit about your childhood and what you saw growing up, like the hustle and the things that you thought that you needed to do based on the things that you saw from your mom.
Yeah, sure. And while I'm doing that, I would love to invite our family in the chat to even answer that question for themselves. Like, what implicit or explicit messages did you get about work and labor from your parents? Because that was the question, that was the powerful question that Jonathan asked us that forged this, that deepened this sacred friendship between me and Crystle. But I will tell you, for me, I grew up in a single mother home, right? Just a little bit of background. My parents basically immigrated from Trinidad and Tobago. I would say maybe in the mid 70s, late 70s that I understand it. I was born in 80s. And they were coming, during this big job boom that was happening in Houston, right? And so it's different for immigrant families. You're coming from a completely different country. You're trying to settle yourself in a new place. My mother, particularly, and this is her version of what happened. And so I honor her story by believing her, right? I know other people might have their own versions of what happened, what their perception is, but me believing Black women is me believing my mother's version of what happened to her and her very real and perceived experience of what happened to her. And so the way she tells it is when she came to this country and she was trying to make it, she asked her family for help and it just didn't happen. Help didn't come. And around that time, she became familiar with my father, who she knew back in Trinidad and Tobago, who I wouldn't necessarily call that relationship love at first sight, right? It was probably comfort, it was probably familiarity, it was probably codependency. And somewhere along the way, I was born. And when I was born, that particular relationship probably imploded in such a way that she got kicked out of the house when I was 2 years old. And again, when I was 2 years old, she relayed that she tried going to her family again for help, for milk money and like basic needs or whatever, and help didn't come, right? And so I say all that to say that when I say that my mother, what I associated with her when it came to work was toil, hardship, burnout, exhaustion, agony, arrogance. She had a love-hate, I think she had a love-hate relationship with her job. She was at Sam's for 30 years and she was proud of that, but I don't remember a lot of joy. Like I don't remember observing a lot of joy from like there were spurts of joy, but it's not like I considered it, like it didn't come off as a calling to me, right? And so I say all that to say I'm threading that needle to say that I believe that part of her toil and her endless sort of pursuit of work probably came from hyper independence, right? This experience of reaching out for help not coming, and then deciding that she will never put herself in a position of having to ask for help again, right? And so she passed that on to me. And I remember, like, she would tell me all the time, she's like, Natasha, when I die, I am leaving everything to you. Do not ask anybody, and I'm talking about anybody, even in this family, do not ask anybody for shit. And so I listened, right? and so I made sure that I worked my ass off, because one of the most scariest thoughts in my mind, in my life, has been I never want to put myself in a position where I have to rely on someone and help doesn't come.
Wow. Don't ask anybody for shit.
Don't ask nobody for shit.
Yeah, that is definitely something that I have heard from my mother as well. She was also very hyper independent, and my father was in the household. They both worked, but for some reason, it was like she didn't lean on him for anything because her previous experiences with other people told her that she couldn't. So it was almost like this, or it was a mistrust of other people. And it's like you can only depend on yourself. And that definitely does show up even as an entrepreneur, or I guess I'm kind of an entrepreneur, y'all. I'm a side hustle entrepreneur.
Nah, she a legit entrepreneur. I don't know what she's talking about. You see all this decoration and stuff over. She an entrepreneur.
Girl, decoration. It looks so good. Chloe, you did an amazing job.
Right.
But I feel like even starting an entrepreneurial journey, in my mind, I'm like, oh, I need to do everything by myself. I can't ask anybody for help because then they're going to think that I don't know what I'm doing. And then that's a bad thing. And I think that's something that not only shows up there, but it shows up at work too. When Black women feel like we have to have all the answers, we can't ask questions because we should already know. Those things come from the trauma that we have experienced in our childhood and in growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to mention, obviously, just the whole the bias and systemic sort of racism and discrimination that comes with, hyper scrutiny of our work, right? Like, I don't know, the term or the phrase "I don't know" is already scary and corporate, but to say it as someone who's marginalized or racialized, you're asking to have a spotlight on you, and you're inviting the label of incompetence if you say I don't know, right? So there's that added vulnerability there.
Yeah. And you're also inviting criticism.
You're inviting criticism, you're inviting people all being all up in your business, you're inviting all types of energy. Corporate if you say the wrong thing.
Yeah, totally. So with that being said, and as we understand it, we know that the things that we experience in childhood show up in adulthood. And as you mentioned, when your mom said, "Don't ask anybody for shit," and these are the things that you learned from her growing up, how did that show up for you in your adult life as you were going through corporate, starting your journey as an entrepreneur? How did it show up for you?
I'm glad you asked about the entrepreneurial thing. I think so. I will say this is probably the first time in my life that I'm truly enjoying entrepreneurship, right? Because when I started in 2012 as a resume and career coach, um, it was enjoyable. The thought of freedom was enjoyable, but I was still getting my sea legs, right? Like I was still trying to figure out what does entrepreneurship mean for me. But on top of all that, I still had to pay bills, right? And again, security is like a big thing for me. So having to, on one hand, balance this new venture of being an entrepreneur, but at the same time, needing to make sure that my savings was still, needing to make sure that I paid basic bills, right? Like that was hard. And so at some point, I did abandon entrepreneurship in order to pour myself completely into my day job, because that's what was comfortable, that was what was secure, that's what was bringing in the paycheck and the money every couple weeks, right? Like there's something that's more addicting than drugs when you have that paycheck coming in every couple of weeks like clockwork, and you can pay that light bill and it says confirmed, man.
When you on auto pay?
There ain't you they haven't invented a cocaine yet that could beat that. But I say all that to say, but when I did go into recruiting, I will say, even though it was a purposeful step, I poured myself into it, and it was a new industry for me, and I found myself like proving myself again because I transitioned from nonprofit to recruiting, and yeah, I overworked. I found myself, somebody finally gave me a shot after so many rejections. And on top of all that, I had to drive in. I didn't have a remote job like I did now. So I was going into work, and it was a long commute. It took me like an hour one way just to get to work. So sometimes I would leave at 6 a.m., I would get back at 8 p.m., and I would work my ass off because I didn't want to lose the job. I didn't want to lose my paycheck. I didn't want to rely. I didn't want to rely on anyone. I didn't even want to rely on my mother, right? Like even though I appreciated her support, I was still dealing, I think, on some level, and this is part of it. I think this is also part of this, which I'll get into. Culture is I felt ashamed of being an adult in my mom's home. Like there was a lot of shame, a lot of imposter, I don't even call it imposter syndrome. There was this inferiority complex with living at home with my mother because I had grown up hearing these messages that if you didn't get your ass out your mama's house or your parents' house at 18, you were a loser. You were a failure. Somebody had failed you if you weren't out that house by 18. On top of all that, I had plenty of friends that were out, like they had their little dorm rooms and they were out living independently. And it was just grueling to know that I was still depending on people. Anyway, so that dove me into my work, and I overworked and I overworked and I overworked until I finally had a mentor that was like, Tasha, if you're doing an 8-hour job in 10 hours, that is inefficient. And I was like, oh, snatch my pearls. I was like, I don't want to be inefficient. I don't want to be incompetent. Snatch me right up. So I ended up sort of withdrawing or weaving away from that. But it took me years. It took me years to get out of that rut of constantly feeling like I had to prove myself, constantly feeling like I have to help people understand that I am not going to be the one that's going to drop the ball, and not feeling like a complete F up if I let a ball drop. And I still struggle with that sometimes. Like I still struggle a little bit with the idea of, oh my God, if I drop this ball, what sort of impact is it going to have on me and my team and others, right?
Yeah. So. I feel like you looking into the depths of my past. It's a therapy session. You said it was a therapy session. It really is a therapy session. It's two things that you said that I want to touch on. So the first is feeling inferior by being in the home. Girl, if I could go back right now, if I knew then what I know now, I would have been in the house forever. I would have been in the house forever trying to figure it out in a space where it's like, oh, my parents got me. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't need to, one, be out there on my own, but then also feel like because other people have these certain things, I need to get these certain things too. And then I'm overwhelmed with all of the things that I'm responsible for because I'm out of the house at 18 and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing stuff just to be doing it because I don't know what I'm doing. So definitely, if I could go back, I would definitely do so many things differently. And in my mind, the first thing that comes to mind for me is my student loans. Because my student loans, I'm not telling y'all how many student loans I have, but just know it's above me now. No, it's above. But I basically I was living on my student loans, also working. And it's like, I wouldn't have this debt if I felt okay, if I didn't feel inferior because I was in the home being supported by my parents. So instead I went out and, got all these extra bills and all these things that I had to pay. And now I'm paying for that in my older years. So if anybody is listening and you are able to be at your parents' house, I would highly recommend it.
You better post up.
As long as it is a safe environment.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Post up and save up. And I'll say this. I think I'm truly starting to recognize, I truly recognize in my older years that was a very westernized concept and belief, right? Like when I went back to in preparation for this conversation, when I went back to my Caribbean community and asked them, I was like, did y'all ever get the message that you were supposed to be out the house by 18? They was like, hell no. Them Americans taught y'all that, because our parents, I mean, they hate to see us go. Caribbean parents hate to see you go. Unless you're just like a real problem, they want you in that house until you get married or until you die. Like,
Yeah.
but somehow, because I wasn't really connected as much with my heritage, right? And I think there's a lesson in that, in sense of when we think about a model of societal health, there is a whole global reference for us to pull from. We don't always have to pull from America and Europe or Eurocentric ideas, right? Like we can pull from parts of Africa, and we can pull from Caribbean, we can pull from other spaces and other places that have a healthier and maybe a more expansive model for us. But I didn't know that when I was younger. And so I ended up putting myself in hell for no reason.
Yeah. 10 out of 10 recommend y'all stay at home. Somebody mentioned 18 to 25.
Mm-hmm.
Stay at home. The second thing you said reminded me of my first job. The first job that I ever got that was like, it kind of sort of in my field. So I have an MBA in HR management.
Mm-hmm.
And I am the definition of a first in my family. So every single move I have ever made in my career has literally been trial and error. And shout out to the Black women that I have met along the way who have shared with me how to navigate my career, how to build legacy, because I didn't have that information. I was just trying different things and seeing where I would land. Well, I was trying to get an HR job. I couldn't get in HR because I didn't have any HR experience. And I think, as many people know, like HR is like one of the most gate kept positions, because you can't really get in unless you know someone. And I know there are people who have landed jobs just because they've landed them, and it's just been, who they are and what it is that they can do, their potential. But for most of us, it's hard to break through. So when I finally landed my first job, it was actually in DEI. And my first DEI job I landed because in the job I was in before, I was picking up like different DEI connected and related initiatives and things, actions, activities that I was doing. So I was able to articulate my value to get that first DEI job. I moved from Virginia all the way to Detroit, Michigan by myself. I didn't know anybody there. I had never been away from my family ever. And I felt that same way where, oh my God, somebody gave me a chance. Did I really deserve it? So now I need to work everybody under the table. I need to work myself to exhaustion. I need to have all the answers to the questions. I need to be on my phone all times of the night, like no downtime, because I need to show them that I'm committed, because in my mind, I'm not worthy of being there. And being that way, like being focused and so tied into work in that way, caused my relationships to suffer. Particularly, I was at that job for a year before I actually got married. And I feel like that critical time with my wife during that time, it didn't really go well. Like we weren't able to like really be in marital bliss because I was so worried about losing my job. If I lose my job, how am I going to take care of myself? How am I going to take care of you, girl? So yes, I got to work late. No, I'm not coming to bed because I got this work to do because I might lose my job. So that is so real to be like, oh my God, I got this chance and I can't fuck it up.
Mm, 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 mm. So felt. I have a response to that, but I feel like the block is hot. The chat is going off the chain. So I feel like let's take a little bit of a break to hear what our family in the chat is saying. John Graham, what's up, John Graham? John Graham say, the Black thirst for validation is a mediocre manager's dream.
1,000%. I was doing everything, all the things. And my manager was nice. He was very nice. But I definitely was his dream. 100%.
Yeah. And let's see, reading through, to have the knowledge is one thing, and to have the language to communicate it hits different. Darlene says, I'm creating a compound for my family. You better say it. We're buying 5 acres and putting at least 3 houses on the compound so the children are always surrounded by family. You see what I'm saying? Like, if I would have grown up like that, and that's the other thing is that this we could honestly have this conversation for 3 hours because there's so many layers to this. Like, I was also disconnected from my family because we're just so war torn from dysfunction.
Yeah.
Just pure dysfunction, pure untreated trauma, wounds, abuse. And because of that, I was missing an auntie. You know what I'm saying? Like I have biological aunties, but when I think about the auntie, like the true royal, amazing place of the auntie, you're talking about somebody who, when your mother and father are just completely wasted and completely burnt out and they don't know what to do with you and you don't know how to connect, you have a safe space in someone, a sacred space in someone who sees you, Crystle, sees you, makes space for you, talks with you, guides you, strikes that balance between not enabling you, but at the same time holding you in such a precious way, but guiding you with wisdom, right? And I didn't have that. And if I would have had that, I probably could have avoided, I think, all the shame that sort of spiraled me into like complete obsession over work, right? And so when I think about that, like I think to myself, instead of us always pressuring women to have children, like encourage some of us to be aunties, because I could be a great auntie. Like I feel like I'm an auntie in training. You know what I'm saying? Let me elevate and graduate to that level of honor. Let me help some of my sisters out that don't have the time to mother all the time. But you know, I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's funny because I feel like now I'm the auntie. So if I need an auntie, reach out. Auntie.
I see highlighted a comment that says, mentorship from Black women has brought so much clarity to my career, especially during times when I didn't understand why people reacted the way they did. Woo, imposter syndrome is most certainly real. We are most certainly deserving of having a seat at the table, but having our own table. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, John.
John is a trip.
Definitely. Rich auntie energy. Even if it's just in wisdom, because remember those student loans.
Yeah, keep the comments coming, y'all.
Yeah, we got one more from Mary. It's a mindset, and our parents and grandparents may be the reason for these behaviors and mindsets, but they are not at fault. Correct. They had to struggle to survive, so they instilled the same thing into us. It's sad, but thank God for healing and growth. 100%.
Dan actually, I think, is asking a great question. In your opinion, is being an auntie a replacement for adequate mental health care within the Black community? I don't think it. I think it's a part of a comprehensive healing practice, right? Like when you think about when you think about mental health care, it's not just sitting in a therapy seat talking with someone about your problems every week. Like I read a book called What Happened to You, and he talks about the ancestral practices of, you know, Native Americans and Indigenous and other cultures that really take more of a communal approach to healing. And for me, I think about that. I'm thinking, I'm referring to the lack of Black psychiatrists, psychologists, and the overall stigma. I think we need all of it. I mean, if that's my shortest answer, like we need Black psychologists, we need Black social workers, but we also need the aunties, we also need the uncles, we need that wraparound sort of support. We need chosen family.
Yes.
We need meditation, and we need nature, and frankly we need a break, because I don't know about y'all, but I'm in these corporate, like when I'm in my day job, and when I hear from other people who are in corporate or government, whatever, y'all, they work us so hard. We work so much. People have to remind themselves to breathe. We don't often have enough time to do things like have a mentorship conversation, or have a sponsorship conversation, or feed into yourself, or read, or do anything of true, like have a true creative rest. So part of this, also this healing practice, is just creating time in modern workspaces for people to breathe and to think and to commune.
Yeah. And if your workplace does not offer that, reclaim your time.
Reclaim your damn time.
Your time. I have like 5-minute reminders throughout the day for me to be mindful, to breathe, to get up, to walk around. Even if it's just 5 minutes, it is still helpful. It is still a form of rest, a form of a break, a form of stillness. So definitely take that time, even if your company doesn't do it, because I mean, nobody's coming to save us but us.
And go on vacation, and go with Crystle and her crew to Colombia and stuff. You know what I'm saying? I'm taking an intentional week in July. I actually put it on the calendar because I also think this is important too. I actually put on the calendar for my day job intentional wellness week, because I also think it's a responsibility of us to encourage other people to take a break. Right. And be very loud about how important your self-care and communal care really is.
Yeah, definitely. Natasha's not inviting you on her week break in July.
Oh, I am not doing none of that. Crystle is, though. She got a plane for you. She gonna fly you out. She gonna fly you out.
But yeah, y'all. So as Natasha mentioned, we have the retreat in August. We're already full in terms of that, but I am considering running it back in Colombia for December, because if you're like me and you're not partnered and you don't have children and you're a Black woman who wants to bring in the new year in a way where you're surrounded by sisterhood, people who understand you, that you don't need to explain yourself to, and you're trying to figure out and create what your plan looks like for 2025. How are you going to design the life that you want to live? Because we have the choice to do the things that we want to do. Then hit me up, because we'd love to have you there. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So to wrap around what we talked about so far. So we talked about, like, as a child, like, what is it that you experienced? What is it that you saw and picked up? How did it show up in your adulthood? And at some point you got to a point where you said, I need balance. I need harmony. Something needs to be different because this ain't working. Can you talk a little bit about how you got there? What was the trigger that told you, hey, I can't, this is not what it's supposed to be. It's not given. And I need to do something different.
I think a few things. I just woke up one day. I mean, I think it was just honestly a domino effect of things, to be honest. What I woke up one day and I was just like, I feel like, where did this obsession with perfection come from? Right? Like, why do I feel like I need to be perfect all the time? And then when I started thinking about all the little moments of my life since I was born, I was like, this is by design. Like, when you come into it, like, when you are born into this world as a human, you are graded from the time that you come out of your mother's womb. People are criticizing and evaluating you on how fast you walk, or how quickly you crawl, how fast you walk, how quickly you can do math, how quickly you can read. You go to school, you get report cards on how smart you are, how intellectually gifted you are, how good you are, how nice you are. Then you go, at some point, you go to work and you get evaluations, and someone who sometimes even barely knows you is grading your entire body of work on how proficient you are, how much you align with the value. I mean, every single part of our lives is graded. And at some point, I was just like, I don't even like these people sometimes. Like, why is it that they have so much power to grade and evaluate me as a person? And why is that? And I just said, you know what? Like, screw it. Like, I don't feel like being perfect anymore. And for what? And for who? And then when I started also recently seeing all the things that were happening in higher education, how some of these wonderful, beautiful Black women in academia were dying,
Yes.
Who were working to the bone and getting kicked out and getting fired. I'm like, how, the whole DEI rollbacks have been happening and affirmative action being snatched back and stuff. I was like, we can't do shit. Like, this is all for nothing. Like, it doesn't matter how accomplished and excellent we are. If someone doesn't want you in their space, they don't want you in their space. And they don't care how excellent or extraordinary you are, because you will never be extraordinary and excellent to them. So I was just like, I am unsubscribing from this. I am withdrawing whatever the hell. I'm taking my card back from whatever little game this is. And I'm going to be me. I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to try to liberate as many people as I can. But in the meantime, I'm going to enjoy life before I cross over to the other side.
Yes, because life is too short. And it is the exact reason why my mission is to help Black women who are saving the world to save themselves first. Because we have been doing the most. Like, we have been trying to change the world around us. And I'm not saying that we haven't made strides and that things haven't changed, but it has been at the expense of ourselves. So many of us have continued to self-abandon time and time again for these jobs, for that check, for our partners, for whoever. We just continue to abandon ourselves and put them first. And I personally, like you said, have also unsubscribed from having to show up for everybody but myself. Why do that?
Exactly. Dan is asking, what is DEI? So diversity, equity, and inclusion. I just make mention of that because that's what I do in my day job, Dan. Outside of being an exclusive life and career coach for Black women.
Mm-hmm. The Black Woman's Soul Coach.
The Black Women's Soul Coach.
So with that being said, all of the things that we've talked about today, I know that in your work as the Black Woman's Soul Coach, you support the women you work with. So how can people work with you? What is it that you would offer to someone who is struggling right now with balance and harmony in their lives?
So right now, I will say I've historically been doing one-on-one coaching with Black women, especially professional Black women or Black women leaders who are just looking to have some sort of equilibrium and more joy in their lives, right? So usually what I would do is I would usually work with them over the course of about 90 days. And we just provide a safe space for this Black woman to be, to dream, to play, to frolic, to be herself, her completely uncensored self. And we focus on several different areas of her life: love, health, wealth, growth, play, giving, all of the things that makes her a whole person. But it's pretty much customized based on what she needs in her life, right? And that's what's great about it is I don't often see a lot of opportunities for or spaces for women, for Black women, to simply just be free. And that's ultimately what I'm offering. It's just a space for you to be free without being judged. Just one single sacred space where you can be as unhinged and uncensored as you want to be. in your own life design.
I love that so much. And you've been talking about sacred spaces lately. And I love that you have created your own sacred space one-to-one with Black women who we are often always like invisible, but also hyper visible. It's like both and. So it's good to have that space available to be able to just show up as you are and not have to explain yourself, because in many spaces we have to go in and explain ourselves. Explain why your hair looked different today than it did yesterday.
Exactly. Well, and here's what I'll also say, stay connected with me, because I've also, like I said, I've come to truly appreciate and probably prioritize more communal care than anything. So I am working on a group coaching experience because I want us to learn from each other. And I want to be able to just amplify the goodness of Black womanhood, right? Like being able to bounce ideas off of each other, being able to celebrate each other, being able to work through problems together, being able to have a shared virtual space so that we can just, amplify our creativity. So just keep in contact with me, because when it comes out, I'm gonna make sure that y'all are the first to know.
Yes, absolutely. So if you are not yet following Natasha D. Wade, the Black Woman Soul Coach, please hit the connect button and connect with Natasha. And also, if you aren't following me, follow me as well. We have another episode of this podcast that's coming up next week. So be here, stay tuned. And then I'll also share, most of you already know that we have a live version of We Ain't Dying for This happening in Atlanta on June 22nd. And my featured guest is Lauren DK. And she is the founder of Harmona Wellbeing. Sorry, Lauren, I'm struggling today. And Lauren was actually in the chat. So you all can also follow Lauren as well. And we did a giveaway earlier this week for a VIP ticket to the summit that we're going to be doing, the live We Ain't Dying for This at Healing While Building. And we gave that ticket away to Carla Ross. So really excited to be able to meet Carla in person in Atlanta on June 22nd. And just want to say thank you, Natasha.
I want to say thank you, Crystle. Listen, I feel so blessed that LinkedIn has brought together a powerful group of Black women, a powerful group of women, period, that are just dedicated to helping Black women and helping women of color in all marginalized communities just be more free. And I'm just happy that you're one of them. I'm happy that we found each other. We found ourselves in each other's inboxes, and we have such a genuine connection. So thank you for connecting with me.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be in community with you. And thank you to everybody who's in the chat. You brought the people with you today. So thank you everybody who has been engaged in the chat. And if you're listening as a replay, make sure you add the hashtag team replay so we know that you were here. And with that being said, we'll see you all next week. Same place, same time.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.